Thank you for being with us this morning. Now, let's get the program started. Barely a week after President Buhari appointed Usman Alkali Baba as the new acting Inspector General of Police, he has unveiled a new policing vision and crime-fighting strategies for the Nigeria Police. We will look at the new policing strategies and other tasks ahead of the new acting IG. And to do this with us this morning, it's my pleasure to welcome the Executive Director, Rule of Law and Accountability Advocacy Center, Mr. Okechukwu Nwaguma. Good morning.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you for joining us. And we have two former policemen joining us virtually. The former police PRO, Mr. Emmanuel Ojukwu, who joins us from Enugu. Good morning, Mr. Ojukwu. As well as Mr. Fatai Owosheni, who is the Special Advisor on Security Matters to the Oyo State Governor. Thank you very much all for joining us this morning. Now let me start with you, Mr. Nwaguma. What are your thoughts regarding these new strategies that the acting IG has unveiled?
Well, I have a little problem with this discussion because we are talking about an acting Inspector General of Police who was appointed following a procedure that is contrary to the Constitution and the Police Act. And I think that...
that's a whole new dimension.
Yeah. I mean, we can't be certain.
He was illegally appointed.
His appointment is illegal, just as the extension of the tenure of the former retired IGP by the president was also illegal. So, and I think that we need to start from the standpoint of the president breaking his streak of illegalities. The president needs to lead by example and stop and comply with the law in government processes. But I mean,
what process did you expect him to follow?
The Constitution and the Police Act are very clear about the procedure for the appointment of an Inspector General of Police. He must appoint them on the advice of the Police Council. The new Police Act, which he signed in 2020, makes the meeting of the Police Council mandatory. By the time the Minister of Police Affairs announced the president's approval of the appointment of an acting IGP, he was still in London. And of course, the minister also confirmed the Police Council has, because that question was put to him, that the council had not met. So this appointment is, and in any case, there is no contemplation of an acting IGP under the law. So everything about this appointment is illegal. And so there's a legitimacy problem.
Okay, let's quickly get the opinion of the two policemen who are with us this morning. Mr. Ojukwu, what are your thoughts about this problem that he just raised?
Nwaguma is entitled to his opinion on the issue of the appointment of IG. I do agree that under the law, there is no provision for an acting IG. That creates a whole lot of problems for the police leadership. When somebody is on acting capacity, he begins to pander to some wishes and some desires for him to be confirmed. It doesn't speak well for this country. The Constitution said that there should be an IG appointed by the president on the advice of the Police Council, and not for the president to appoint an acting IG and then thereafter wait for the council to ratify rubber stamp. It is contrary to the law. The proper thing ought to be done, and even also to follow in line with the new Police Act, like my friend just earlier mentioned. But that does not make the appointment illegal, so to speak. But I do know that the council will sit eventually and ratify it. There should be no vacancy on the seat of the Inspector General of Police of Nigeria, because there are a lot of issues to be dealt with. Somebody is there already and he has to hit the ground running, which he has done. And that, I believe, is why we're here to discuss the roadmap.
Okay, Mr. Owosheni, quickly, in one or two sentences, your opinion about this.
I don't think I want to join issues as to legality and as to what the law has prescribed. Once there is a vacancy, once the office of the IG is declared vacant, whoever that is probably the most senior, whether named by the president as acting IG or not named, it's assumed that the person will follow suit. And in this case, whether the person is appointed legally or not, the person that is sitting down there now as acting IG is apparently the most senior police officer after the former IG was removed. So,
okay, thank you, Mr. Wojeni. Thank you. We will just take a short break now and come back and actually go into the substance of this topic.
It's a new dawn in broadcasting as Lagos transits from analog to digital.
So we are glad that I think we are averagely confident that Lagos, we are ready to take on Lagos.
The launch is on April 29, 2021, under the watch of the National Broadcasting Commission, NBC. Now, here's what you need to know about the digital switchover. All you require is the free TV set-top box and an antenna. The aim is to get connected. Connect the antenna to the set-top box, then connect the set-top box to your TV with the HDMI cable or a 3-colored composite TV cable, depending on your TV type or model. Next, select HDMI or AV as the source. Then use the set-top box remote control to scan and control the TV channels. Of course, you must check your power source and cross-check your other connections and you're good to go. Lagos, get ready for this digital revolution as we bid goodbye to analog broadcast and welcome the digital format in the state.
Nigeria's 21st Indigenous Inspector General of Police arrives at the State House ahead of his decoration. The Vice President, Professor Yemi Oshinbajo, performs the decoration ceremony in the presence of the wife of the new police chief, as well as the outgoing Inspector General of Police, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, and the Minister of Police Affairs, Mr. Margaret Ngati. Professor Oshinbajo also gave a charge to the new police boss.
Under your leadership, the police must now rebuild, in some ways also, the broken bridges of trust with the public and regain the confidence of the citizenry. This is an ongoing challenge, it's an ongoing task that the police force and all of the senior members of the police force must take on as a responsibility.
The new IG of police is aware of the task ahead of him, and he declares he is prepared to tackle the challenge.
I came in at a very challenging time. I know it, I've recognized it, and I will work on how to improve from where my predecessor has left.
At the force headquarters, the #1 police officer inspects a guard of honor. He proceeds to the conference hall for the traditional handing over of baton, and then he sees off his predecessor. In his maiden address, he promises to ensure that the police is restored as a major force in the country.
The task of restoring the primacy of Nigerian police in the internal security architecture of the country is the main challenge ahead of all of us. It is, however, a task that I am convinced we can surmount if we resolve as a people to partner and present a common front against the subversive and criminal elements who are the common enemies of the whole nation.
Nevertheless, he has a word of advice for the officers.
I am mindful of the yearnings of Nigerians for a policing system that will not only assure them of their safety, but treat them with civility and hold their human rights sacred.
As he settles down to business, the task ahead of him is well cut out and is expected to tackle the security challenges ahead of the country.
Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. Yes, now that we have finished talking about the legality or otherwise of this appointment.
So have we really?
Well, we haven't agreed whether it is legal or not, but we have discussed it. So it's open for discussion, guys. The discussion continues. In the meantime, so he is there as the acting IG. Whether that post exists by the Constitution or not is immaterial at this time. He has been appointed the acting IG, and he has put some strategies in place. He has said exactly what he wants to do to reform the police. You used to be in a body that was looking at the reforms in the police.
I'm still in the body, really.
Good. So what are your thoughts about these suggestions that he has made?
Well, speaking on the assumption that we have an IGP who is legally appointed, I do not really envy any person appointed as Inspector General of Police of the Nigerian Police Force. And the reason is that we will be expecting magic of anybody with the police force the way it is currently constituted. The police needs overhauling. It needs rebranding. It needs transformation. It needs funding. Today, the police officers themselves are targets of attacks on a daily basis. They can't even defend themselves. And so what about the ordinary citizens they are set up and charged to? So we need to begin to, first of all, address how do we equip the police? How do we empower the police? How do we increase intelligence, investigative, and operational capacity to enable the police to discharge their primary function of protecting the citizens? Now, the police trust fund was set up because it became clear that the federal government, which has the sole responsibility of security, could not adequately fund the police. And so we came about with the idea of a police trust fund, which was set up in 2018. Nobody's asking questions. The funds for the trust fund are supposed to come from the federal the contributions, certain percentage from the federal government, from companies, from donations and so forth. We're not asking questions about how much has the trust fund received, how much has it disbursed. How come we have not seen any change in terms of funding and operations and effectiveness in the police 2 years after the trust fund?
I'm sorry, Mr. Ogumo, if you don't mind, I think maybe we should consider what are some other things that the money itself will do. Perhaps because there's those who feel that the problem is not only or first of all about money, but about operation. So let me ask you, Mr. Ojukwu, what would you say are the real issues that the police is having that any IGP must address? There are those who feel, for instance, in the wake of the attacks on police infrastructure in Imo State, there was a lot more wrong than just money. For instance, there was surveillance, and according to the DSS, the information got across to the police, yet nothing was done. And it's not something that just happened once or twice. It happened like 2 or 3 times successively. Maybe not on a regular number of days, but at least they happened so back to back that people began to wonder exactly what is wrong. That's not just a problem of money, is it, Mr. Ojukwu?
Money is a key factor in policing Nigeria. But let's not talk about money. We're looking at a police force that is highly demobilized, and they're demobilized because of money, lack of money. We look at a police force that is highly demotivated. They are demotivated because of poor funding, poor remuneration, poor take-home, poor welfare. We're also looking at a police force that has been humiliated by Nigerians. The NSAS protest and the toll it took on the police is calamitous. Many officers have become demoralized because they saw those they were working for or serving, even roasting them and eating them as meat. We saw cannibalism in the 21st century being done on policemen. So the workforce, apart from being demotivated, they have a low morale. So the new IG has a lot of work to do to revamp the morale of the policemen. Let their fighting spirit be returned. Let police become again an organization that can dominate a situation and assert herself. So the police needs a lot of psychological retuning. Any reformation now has to be on the psychology of the policemen, their morale, and their ability to face the onerous task of policing this nation. The new IG is coming at a time when there are fights to be fought from many fronts. It's coming at a time that information highway is loaded with so many things to be dealt with. But those to deal with it, the men are not in the proper shape. They need to be reinvigorated. I'm talking about their morale. Now, talking about intelligence and information.
Exactly. Because, I mean, you've talked about all of the morale thing. If I can just take you up on one, we'll come back to that intelligence, please. Let's keep our tabs there. But you said that, you know, the NSAS occasion or event demonstrated that people do not trust the police. But don't also forget that the NSAS campaign didn't just start in October last year. It's something that has been on for years, like 2 or 3 IGPs before what happened, last year, such that people had been calling for a revamp of the SARS unit over and over again because of their extra brief activities, if I can use that term, such that they do things that is outside of their brief. And it is not something that is new. People have been calling for attention to SARS for a very long time, and nothing was happening. And this, activities, human rights abuses and all continued almost untamed. So what we saw last year was like a boil over. It wasn't something that was intended to go that way if it had been attended to earlier. So it's the question that I'm asking now is, the general operations of the police that over the years has gotten to the point where people now do not trust the police, even from the mouth of the new acting IGP. So what are the things that are responsible for that in the first place?
Okay, the trust gap between the police and the public did not start today. We must still cast our minds back to the history of the police. The police wasn't created to be a friendly force. It wasn't created by Nigeria and by Nigerians. It was a force of domination to cause atrocities on Nigerians. That was done by the colonial masters. And we as Nigerians, since we became independent, we have not thought it fit to restructure our police, to make it our own police and not colonial police. We didn't give the police a guiding law. It was only last year that we had the Police Act, after 75 years. So the old police was operating on the old law, on the old psyche, on the old mentality. Now that we own the police, the transformation has to be gradual. We need to reorient our policemen to work in line with the dictates of democracy.
Mr. Juku, just a moment. While what you say is quite valid in the eye of the law from all that you have said, but over these years that you have talked about, all the policemen have been Nigerians. So they should, I believe, have enough nationalism or patriotism in their hearts to say, I'm policing my people, I should have a Nigerian interest as opposed to a dominant or a tendency to dominate other people. Don't you think that is something that should have been inculcated into them at the point of training?
Thank you. You see, when we began this discourse, you wanted to minimize the influence of fund. You can't throw it away. I don't know if you have paid a visit to any of the police training institutions. There's no policeman that I know who is a boy. They're all men, 18 years and above. And they come into the police with their mindset, with attitudes from years back in their homes and in their communities. And within these communities and schools, people already have the impression that the police is a force of domination, that the police is unfriendly. Now, while you are in the school, in the training institutions, in line with the police, to begin to give these new recruits, new policemen to be the proper orientation. But where is the motivation to train them? What facilities? In a classroom in the police college, close to you there, you have 500 recruits to be trained by one person. No vision, no public address system. They don't go to range. They are humiliated while in training. They are not fed. They defecate in the open. We dehumanize them. And equity, if you want equity, they say you must do equity. You must come with clean hands. If you've not trained them properly, don't expect them to perform miracles or to do wonders. So it still boils down to funding and Nigeria's attitude to their police. We still see the police as a different police force, but it's our police. If we want this police, train them properly, motivate them properly, they will perform. It is said that action and reaction are equal and opposite. Many of us see the police as the dregs, as the never do well, as armed, as dirty and whatever. And these are Nigerians, you know, who have bona fide claim to this country. They go to the same schools, they go to the same markets, and they know what is happening in this country. And they have the right to stop you from further insult. So when such reactions occur, it requires an inward looking. The new IG has to look into the police force and reorientate the attitude of the officers for more friendliness, because the public are yearning for better services.
Okay.
It takes two to tango. The
All right,
police should not be thrown away.
Mr. Juku, that point has been made. Let me throw this to Mr. Oshini. I don't know if you have anything to say about all that we have talked about so far. I agree completely that yes, and everyone else would agree that to a large extent the police is underfunded. Otherwise, we would have more than the number of policemen that we have now. They would be better kitted. They would have better vehicles. But the question that we want to ask is it first of all about money or the general operational modes of the police at this time?
Thank you very much. I will probably slightly differ from some of the submissions that have been made. I want to first seize this opportunity to congratulate the new IG, but I don't envy him. I wonder when IGs are appointed in Nigeria, whether they are appointed to fail or succeed. And I will go historical. We must first know and accept something, that the police is the symbol of government and the society. I've always referred to the Willink Commission of 1957. General Aguirre Osibeng, the head of state and chairman of the Supreme Military Council, made a statement that the police have become an indispensable organ of a government in any civilized community. They have powerful elements in the strength and weakness of any nation. Indeed, as law enforcement and corrective agencies, their role in the mainstream of any society is distinctively important. As the government taking this into consideration at all? They've talked about a new police act. They've talked about having a new Nigerian police. The new police act itself is faulty. The new Police Act has not been subjected to the police council that administers the police. There are so many flaws in that police act itself. I personally don't believe that that police act will lead Nigeria police to anywhere. What matters most, and why I have given this background, is it is the political element, that is, the government is there, the political class, that determine the direction of a country and how the police is going to perform. The new Inspector General of Police, I remember talking to Ayola last night when she talked about setting an agenda for the new Inspector General of Police. We don't need to set an agenda for him. The IG knows what is happening in the country. He already has his job cut out for him. Having his job cut out for him, he must have a strength of character. I don't know whether it is possible for any IG to say, if I'm not given the wherewithal to discharge on my responsibilities, I want to leave. It is not until when we have such a situation, it may sound radical. If you have a situation like in Imo State, attacking the police headquarters is never had in history. You have an Inspector General of Police that you've given such responsibilities. You don't even have the strength. They must start recruiting heavily, not just recruiting. The firing, the tactical unit of the Nigeria Police, the Police Mobile Force, is already moribund, sort of. You are going to post 10 policemen, 10 mobile policemen to a point who are supposed to be fully armed, because that is what the PMF is for. You have 10 policemen with 2 rifles guarding the place. How many police command headquarters can boast of having a standby unit of a mobile police that is armed? So my take is that it's not just about the Inspector General of Police. He has a role to play. He has to, accept the fact that some of the criticisms and whatever about the police are legitimate ones. The disquiet being expressed by the people are legitimate ones. But it cannot solve the problem if the political class, the political element, starting from the office of the president up to the National Assembly, if they don't provide the wherewithal, we're just talking rhetorics. The police that we have today is not capable of policing this country, not until when the wherewithal is provided. So I would pray for the IG to have the courage, to have the strength of character, to be able to speak the truth to the authority. It should also have the courage and the character to listen to his management team, his tactical operational officers, to be able to speak the truth to him. If we don't do that, we will just be, lamenting every time. The IG should be able to assemble all whatever reform papers, see the ones that the office of the IG can implement without even running to the ministry. That is my take.
Well, there are so many issues to that, because socially, if he has to look at all the reforms, we have to go back all the way to 1922. But we'll talk about more of that, when we return from this break. So do stay with us.
This is the inaugural meeting of the Acting Inspector General of Police with all the senior police officers from the rank of Commissioners of Police and above. This strategic meeting gives the police chief an opportunity to review the strategies that would help in restoring order and public confidence.
I must re-emphasize that the major task ahead of us is to address the threats of successional banditry, kidnapping, armed robbery, and the other sundry violent crimes within the shortest possible time and change the narratives, and return our beloved nation to the path of peace, unity, and national security. The reality, however, is that more grounds need to be covered if we are to restore public confidence. I am confident that we can surmount this task, as the Nigeria Police is endowed with some of the finest, courageous, patriotic officers who have consistently demonstrated the capacity to step over institutional challenges to confront crimes.
He orders some reorganization in the force as a way of restoring professionalism and addressing citizens' concerns on rights abuse.
To our post-reorganization plan, as well as our commitment to return to the basic policing, I have directed the immediate reform of the IGP monitoring unit, which is one of the major complaints I have received as soon as coming into office. This involved the disbandment of the satellite offices of the unit in Lagos and Port Harcourt, the streamlining of the personnel profile of the unit at the force headquarters to a number not more than 50, the banning of the unit from undertaking any criminal investigation, including taking over cases from commands. Under the current dispensation, the unit will only operate within their original mandate, which is to investigate complaints of professional infractions that may be alleged against any serving member and as may be referred to them by the Office of the Inspector General of Police.
The recent pattern of crime, which indicates an increasing threat to internal security, has been a major concern to both the security agencies and the public. Many in this hall are optimistic that the short and long-term strategies of the police chief would hopefully see an end to this trend as soon as possible.
Thanks for staying with us. Mr. Waguma, we've talked about a lot of things, the issues that the police have on their hands. Yes, money definitely plays a lot of role, but the question, let me take it from where Mr. I think it was Mr. Wosheni, stopped about reforms and everything, and you have led the way, so to speak, in that for a while. I also remember, if you do a simple Google search about police reforms in Nigeria, you will find out that there's all kinds of need for all kinds of reforms. Civil service reforms, police reforms, and stuff like that. When we talk about police reforms, exactly what? Is it just these issues that we're talking about? Or the operational arrangement of the police? Or the administrative, end of the police? How significant is this reform to the entire security architecture that we're talking about in Nigeria?
Well, police reform is all-encompassing. It seeks to address all the challenges that impede effective and professional policing. But of course, with respect to Nigeria, the first thing is just like Mr. Ojukwu rightly said. Nigeria inherited, institutions and culture of the colonial police. And the new Police Act and all the efforts over the years has been to try to change the vision and mission of the police from a force of occupation that, sees its mission to be to suppress, rather than to a police that serves and protects. So change that vision and mission. And that is why, if you look at the new Police Act, it starts with general principles, issues about respect for human rights, partnership with the community, accountability, and all that, service to the people. And so what it requires then is to begin to implement these new inclusions. For example, in the same Police Act that I talked about, because issues of funding has, like we said, it makes provision for what is called policing plan. That the Inspector General of Police must come up with an annual policing plan, which will set out the objectives of policing, the priorities, the cost, and the expected outcome. And to each of these, the plan will be attached a budget, so that at the end of the year, you're able to assess how the police has been able to achieve its plan over the years. And fortunately, again, the same act has provided for a secured tenure for the IGP. Before now, no IGP was sure of how long the president could just, by a tweet, he could just wake up in the morning and tweet to sack an IGP. But under the present dispensation, he cannot do that. The IGP must be appointed for a secured tenure of 4 years. And for him to be removed, the police council must also, the president must also consult. He cannot just wake up. But the question is whether the president will even respect the law in respect of all these things we are saying.
Okay.
So yeah. So
Okay.
if you really look at the Police Act, you know that, I mean, it's not a perfect document, but for the first time in over 75 years, like Mr. Ojukwu rightly said, we now have a new framework, legal framework to govern policing in a democracy.
Okay. Mr. Ojukwu, Mr. Maguna spoke about a police force that was given to us, by the colonial masters. And we left these colonial masters 60 odd years ago. And we all know that policemen go, at least the officers, go for training abroad. And I'm sure some of them have also been to the country of the ex-colonial master for training and learned how policing is done over there, and being part of a policing that is not to oppress the one being colonized. So how come in 60 years we have not been able to bring some of that training to bear on our own policing in Nigeria?
Thank you. I have heard it said several times that you cannot build anything from nothing. Since the ground norm of policing was based on colonial dictates, there's nothing you can add to it except you remove that foundation, which is what the Police Act has just begun to do. Many of us have attended courses. Many officers are even attending courses right now in foreign countries. We've had interfaces in the course of peacekeeping operations, in course of training, to interact with police forces from all over the world. Nigerian police officers have been so well trained in those areas. But the number is minute. This is the largest police force, I think, so in Africa, south of the Sahara. Very, very big, and has enormous responsibilities. But there is a strong training deficit in the police force. Now, when two or three officers go abroad on course, they return. They have to do whatever they have learned in the same system that is flawed. There is what is called conditioning. You adapt to your environment. If you come with such material, such ideas to implement, and you are not the commander of that area, the system will drown you, make you to play according to the rule. What is that rule? The police has not been so factored to operate efficiently. I had a colleague, a senior colleague, I think TPL Liberty said some time ago, that the police is about life and property. Every Nigerian has life, has property, and the police are the one to protect that life and the property. But what is our attitude to this police? Now, when you train officers and talk to them on best practices, they will situate you within the environment where they operate. Is it possible to operate in that way? Now, elsewhere in this world, policemen have body cameras. They have so many gadgets. In fact, they use public phone. But here, every Nigerian policeman uses his own mobile phone to make calls and to do so many things. Some drive themselves to their offices, use their money to buy fuel for vehicles. Everything is still there. The environment is not conducive for proper policing. We have to make the environment conducive for these young men and women to give of their best. Anytime police officers from Nigeria go abroad on peacekeeping operations, they are rated as the best. Why? Because they've suffered so much in this country, and once they have a little leeway of where things are easy, they excel above the indigenous of that area because the environment is conducive. Let us Nigerians make the environment of policing conducive. Let these men be properly recruited, properly trained, properly remunerated, and let us have an attitude to them that they are part of us and they are not renegade elements that could be roasted and be eaten on the streets and nobody will raise an eyebrow. Let us treat our police well and we'll get the best out of them.
Well, interesting perspective right there, Mr. Ojukwu. Well, Mr. Ojenu, you talked about, the need for us to, you referenced the Imo occurrence the other time, and it begs the question of intelligence and how or not such intelligence is used. You are not unaware, for instance, that the DSS had said that, you know, there were leads passed on to the police, and but that about 2 days or thereabout before the attacks, and nothing was done. So in this new light now, one wants to ask the question, what are those things that were left undone? What are those things that led to that vulnerability of the police? And what should we do, both from the federal level down to the state commands and the zones, to ensure that such a thing does not repeat itself anymore? Because just as you said, it is unheard of that we should have attacks on police infrastructure.
Thank you so much. It will continue to repeat itself if the fundamental, the roots of why you are having this are not addressed. And what is the fundamental? You know, recognizing the police as it is, as the symbol of government and society. We can do so many, we can set up so many reform committees. We can continue to lament like this. We can continue to change the Inspector Generals of Police if we don't address the root causes. That is, set up police as a symbol of government, as the lead agency in internal security, stop balkanizing and decimating the police, and making a fraction bigger than the whole. That is, the country needs to see the police as an institution that must be adequately catered for. You know, I mentioned a situation where you have the striking arm of the police PMN, people that are there already tired. To put in more people there, the strength from which to take from is not there. You go to some of the police stations now in the remote part of the country, you will see 5 policemen in a police outpost or police division. Out of the 5 policemen, only 1 is carrying rifles. And we continue to, you know, do all this lamentation. Somehow, personally, I want to say I'm sad when people talk of the new police act as having addressed police problems. There is virtually nothing that is in the new police act that is not in the old police act. Is the wherewithal and you know, the courage of the leadership of the police and the police officers and men themselves to adhere to that. If you don't have a mechanism for a conduct and discipline monitoring, professional standard units and all whatever, when we used to have the MSD department, management service department that check all that, you can have all those things. If you don't really have what it takes to carry out this. They mentioned about NSAS. What is it that caused NSAS? The people are talking of police brutality and whatever. The appalling nature of police cells itself, you know, the sad environment which policemen they live in is enough to make people to complain. It is not just about the individual. It's not the policeman on the street that will build a cell. What the best practices says, we want to copy from abroad and whatever, is that you should have a police cell that you can separate men and women and children, and where suspects would be adequately taken care of to an extent. So already, once you are putting anybody in police cell before you carry him to the court, you have already dehumanized him. And it's not the policeman that will provide that. So my basic thing will still be that the government should be ready to make the Inspector General of Police to succeed. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not sure we are ready to have a police. It is until when the government is ready to say that we have appointed an IG, we want the police to succeed, and give him what it takes. Don't keep on balkanizing the police. Don't keep on, you know, transferring the work that police should do to institutions that at the end of the day will not perform, and you will still come and blame the Inspector General of Police. So it is a big challenge that everything you must go to the root, and the root is proper funding, training, get the right mindset for the people that are managing the police. Once you are able to do that, all the countries you are mentioning, they have a culture. It is everything they do is tied to their culture. We've been talking about community policing here. You can't put something on nothing. In those countries, they have this culture of civic obligations, volunteering, which we don't have. You are talking of body cameras. Is that what is going to solve police problem? It's not what is going to solve police problem. You must reorientate the people as well. The police will reflect society where it works. The performance and conduct of police officers is a factor of the conduct of the populace and the society. That's my take.
Okay, Mr. Mwakuma, let's go back to the IG now and his vision. Some of the highlights of this vision include deploying cutting-edge policing technology and integrating intelligence-led policing practices to core policing functions with a view to strengthening police capacity to stabilize the internal security order and restore public confidence in the force. How do you see him achieving this in light of all these things that we have spoken about this morning?
You know, I started by saying that I do not envy anybody who is appointed in special.
All three of you have said the same.
Yeah, because what they need to effectively do what they need to do is not there. The police investigator is unable to investigate, carry out simple investigation because there is no fund to do that. The police cannot move from point A to point B to investigate. They rely on the complainant for what they call mobilization. And then when you arrest, this whole idea of bribe for bail is all part of efforts to raise revenue. So the police, denied of funds, they are forced to look for other means of generating revenue. When you see police going out on raids, I agree with you that in Lagos, for example, cultism is an issue. But most of the times when you see them raiding places in the pretext of looking for cultists, it is not so. Everybody arrested is meant to pay money because the point is about to raise money. So it has become it has turned, denying the police resources creates room for violence and corruption.
Just a moment. On this that you have just said now, I mean, if that is what the police does, that is clear infraction on human rights.
No, absolutely. So and I was going there.
Who is questioning them?
I was going there. You know that what I've just described now, because as you know, on a daily basis, we are organization monitor police conduct. So we're not saying things that we imagine. We're saying things we see. It is this kind of situation that incrementally led to NSAS. And just like we knew, after NSAS, it doesn't seem to me that much has changed. Because as a matter of fact, when the police, initially they were no longer around. They were not, you don't find them in the stations, you go there, you don't see anybody. But when they returned, they came back with a vengeance. So we are still seeing those things that happened, and they're happening again. And the preamble to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says that if people are not to be compelled as to resort, to rebellion as a last resort, that human rights must be protected by the rule of law. So the reason that people don't have confidence in the police is because, one, they view the police as being ineffective in addressing their concerns, in protecting them. They also violate human rights. And I've told you that human rights is encouraged when police are denied what they need to work, and so they resort to other means, and in the process, corruption, human rights. So at the end of the day, everything turns back to equipping the police, training, equipment, the police. I started by mentioning police trust fund here. The purpose of that trust fund is equipment, training, and retraining. We are not asking questions, what is the police trust fund doing? Now, police stations have been burnt everywhere. How are we going to rebuild them? What is the place of the police trust fund? You expect the IG to perform with what? There are no resources. The men are demoralized.
Okay. Mr. Ojukwu, what would be your last words on this, because we're gradually winding down? Well, clearly, the task before the new acting IG is, as you said, clear.
Myriad.
And he himself, as we have all identified, seems to have held it. If you were to advise him to prioritize, what would it be?
Well, first is to advise Nigerians, the political elite, and the government to allow the IG to do his job as a trained police officer. He has come a long way, he knows it. He should be allowed to do it. There's too much political interference in policing. That even where the man has good intentions to make the police live up to their billings, somebody out there will really stick on the IG. You got to take my not fair, and then we blame the IG, we blame the system. When we who are
well, we've got that. We're gradually winding down. But Mr. Osheni, you as well, if you can just give us your last words. If you,
one sentence.
I will pray for the IG. He should do things the way he knows that he will serve humanity, recognize the fact that as an Inspector General of Police, and put it in the minds of the police that their loyalty is to the Constitution of this country, that the police should not be apolitical at any point in time. That will be my advice for him.
Very much, gentlemen. I'm sorry, we've completely run out of time. All that's left for me just to say thank you to all of you. Mr. Fatai Owosheni, Special Advisor on Security Matters to the Oyo State Governor. Mr. Emmanuel Ojukwu, former police PRO, who joined us, both of whom joined us virtually, as well as Mr. Okechukwu Nwaguma, Executive Director, Rule of Law and Accountability Advocacy Center, who was with us in our studios in Lagos. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming to share your insights with us. Sunrise will be right back with another interesting conversation. Do stay with us.